Australian comedians. We've got so many true blue Aussie legends make a name for themselves with their sharp wit, great jokes and self-deprecating sensibilities that have changed the ways Australians are viewed overseas. Hannah Gadsby, Randy Feltface, Joel Creasy, Adam Hills, and the list goes on. Wait, who? No.
Fucking website that just attacks people for shit they've written on the internet. They're a bunch of fucking assholes.
No, not him.
Change Super Dupers to deep-throating hairy blokes and public toilets iced treat.
Yep, today I'm taking a look at the classiest Ned Kelly impersonator that the internet has to offer, Isaac Butterfield. If you've never heard of Isaac, that's probably because you're not a 12-year-old boy or Sky News viewer. If you are indeed either of those two things, please stick around because this video will be fun, ? If you're not, a small primer on our man Butters. Butterfield started off his internet career making angry rant videos about feminists, vegans and cyclists. Butterfield's career today includes him making angry rant videos about feminists, vegans and cyclists, although now he swaps out cyclists occasionally for other culture war talking points. You know, body positivity activists, the LGBT community, Peter, married at first sight. No wait, go back, that one's good. And people who don't like Jordan Peterson. He's even gotten himself into high-profile spats with Vosh, of all people, and I say let them fight it out. Both fairly controversial figures within their respective communities, let their audiences duke it out. For every, let's say, comedic video about, you know, joining cyclist dating sites or people who seem to genuinely not believe that Australia exists, or at the very least, the satire went over Isaac's head, he has at least 5 videos on cancel culture, Joe Rogan, interviews with some of the internet's finest, like domestic abuser Avi Yamini, failed UKIP candidate Count Dankula, TERFs Ariel Scarcella and Abigail Schreier, amongst others. Transphobic content masquerading as debate, anti-SJW content circa 2015, more anti-SJW content circa 2015, and dumb culture war bullshit like the Golden Gay Time controversy, and if you're not from Australia, that's an ice cream. And there is a change.org petition to change the name of it that has 200 signatures by an account created less than 2 months ago. So it's a really legit campaign, totally not designed to discredit genuine LGBT gripes with society. Now, I've got one specific video that I want to talk about today because I thought it was particularly egregious. Mainly because he kept driving right up to the point and then chucking his car in reverse and turning it around. Why people still believe in the wage gap. Yeah, exactly. It is exactly what you'd expect. Well, somewhat. You know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just start the video. Isaac starts his video in the one of 2 ways that right-wing grifters start their videos on controversial topics. It's either out-and-out derision and disbelief, we'll call it the Crowder Shapiro, or you feign shock and understanding that yes, this issue actually exists. But gosh darn golly, are those activists just doing the wrong things?
And we've seen it here recently in Australia where women are not feeling comfortable and safe at work because of alleged predators living in the workplace environment, and that is absolutely, without a doubt, just heinous. It's horrible.
Also, he drills down the current crisis of sexual misconduct and harassment within the Australian Parliament to women feeling uncomfortable due to alleged predators, and that feels slightly disingenuous considering that the Australian former Attorney General is one of the men who's being accused of harassment here. But that would, you know, make it functionally institutional, and institutional sexism and harassment doesn't exist. Nah, Butterfield is just trying to cut through all the misinformation and get the truth out there.
That's not what this video's about. It's not about argue about this, argue about that. No, it's not about that. I'm just trying to rationalise all of this. Because there are a lot of people right now out there who are angry. And combine that with the enormous amount of misinformation that is available to people, it is a recipe for disaster. This is a subject that gets rehashed anytime someone talks about women in the workplace. The gender wage gap. Now, I've made 2 videos on the gender wage gap all the way back in 2019.
Now, anyone who's done, let's say, a semblance of research into the wage gap knows that it does exist. women do earn less than men for a variety of reasons, and to his credit, Butters here knows that.
And the reason that so many people believe that the gender wage gap is real is because it is.
Hand me this instant. Give me a moment to explain.
Men are paid more than women on average across the globe.
He's open about saying that employers aren't directly committing wage discrimination, but I'm sure that still happens. It's due to institutional factors that affect women but not men, which is where Butterfield gets tripped up. As a base, the WGEA, or Workplace Gender Equality Agency, an Australian organisation, says that the current gender pay gap in Australia is 13.4%, meaning the average weekly earning for men is $18,004.20, and for women, it's $1,562. Exactly. And this has actually decreased over the last few years, which is good to hear. But, you know, having one gender get paid 10% less than the other is still very bad. The data is taken across age groups, with women over 50 suffering the biggest gap by industry, public administration and retail, yay! Professional and financial services, no! And by occupation. If you're looking for a job that minimizes the gap, try a clerical or administration position. Jesus, what a horrible thing to have to say to someone. This data is comprehensive. In a way, it doesn't take into account race, but we can't have everything, so this is as good as it gets. And again, this is where Butterfield is seemingly correct. And then he says but, and lambasts the fact that he said but, and just goes off.
But, I don't know how many times someone says but in these conversations, everyone freaks the fuck out. But it's not because of the reasons you think. Women are not paid less than men because they have vaginas. Genitals don't have much to do with it at all. It has a lot to do with other factors. Factors like men choosing different jobs to women.
Yes! Other factors! Brilliant! It's not all about vaginas. Okay, this old chestnut. Men choose higher paying careers. Butterfield has stumbled onto a sociological concept called occupational segregation. Sociologist at Ohio State University, Natasha Quadlin, studied this very thing in 2019, using data from the Pathways Through College study, which surveyed 2,720 students from 3 higher education institutions with programs that were intended to attract and retain STEM majors, and found that even when earning potential was a major preference, men and women still moved towards different majors. So even if money is your #1 goal while studying, you will most likely go into a different major than your opposite gender counterpart. Why is that? Butters has an answer?
For example, men are more likely to choose a career in the mining industry than a woman is. That is a higher paying industry, and therefore that bumps the numbers up.
Okay, mining. Firstly, higher paying than what? What is your basis for higher paying? Because, well, did you know that the gender pay gap within the mining industry is 14.8%, 2% higher than it was before the COVID crisis? So even if women choose to work in such a higher paying industry, they still get shafted. But I'm sure that he's actually specifically talking about how men in mining make up 84% of the workforce, and this thus skews the data. But let's talk about mining specifically for a second. Did you know that up until 1986, women in Western Australia, a state in Australia that has a huge resources industry, weren't allowed to go underground in mines? And that wasn't a private rule amongst companies. That was state law. And companies would receive hefty fines for letting women anywhere near the pits. Women with degrees in geology, engineering, metallurgy were confined to working within the university system because they were deemed useless on site by the state. Now, I don't want you to hear 1986 and think, okay, wow, everything is fixed, because clearly it isn't. 16% of the mining workforce in Australia is female. That stat alone shows the systemic problems here that arose from having those kinds of rules and laws. For one, women voluntarily pushing themselves out of STEM positions in favour of jobs that would actually hire them still exist today. It isn't hard to understand why a woman might not see a future in a job that barely hires people like her. But I'm getting sidetracked here. What does Butters have to say next?
Conversely, women are more likely to choose a job like nursing, which isn't paid as much as people in the mining industry. And you can argue about that, but the numbers speak for themselves. They're not paid as much, and therefore the numbers are bumped down.
Women choose lower paying jobs like nursing instead of going to work in the mines. And then there's no analysis of why that might be. Okay. Back to Natasha. Men and women look at what they might consider a realistic career for themselves differently, and the research here again is clear. To quote the good sociologist, there's research that suggests men and women have very different ideas about what types of careers and fields are open and available to them. Some STEM careers that pay the most may not be as receptive to women as they are to men, so women adjust what majors they select. Thus, even women who are motivated by money choose majors that they believe are both high-paying and available and accessible to women. Which is why many women still don't study in STEM fields, as the historic and ongoing bias against these women still exists. Okay, next point, Butterfield, what you got?
Women are far more likely to work in a part-time position than a full-time position in comparison to men. In fact, in March 2020, just under half, 44% of Australian female employees worked part-time hours compared to about 18% of male employees.
44% of women work part-time compared to 18% of men. Again, Australian statistics. Good point. We should discuss why women are seemingly massively overrepresented in part-time roles, whilst the vast majority of men seem to have the benefits of ongoing full-time work. Oh wait, no, you started talking about something else already.
Now, why is that? Men on average work longer hours than women. And there's also so many reasons that may be the case as well. Men on average work more hours than women in the office. Why? Probably because we're all assholes. We don't give a fuck about nice things in life, like getting home, having a family, and being good people. That may be the reason.
What are you on about? How long has it been since you've had an actual job, Butterfield? The amount of hours you work in the office has no bearing on whether you're a full or part-time employee. Management dictates that. Have you been a YouTube sensation for so long you've forgotten how workplaces actually function? You want to know how long the overemphasis of women as part-timers in our society has been an issue? Well, here's a study out of Edith Cowan University from 1996. Like all aspects of our society, part-time work is undergoing change. Where once it was targeted more towards those who wish to accommodate work and family, it is now becoming a career choice of many as organizations downsize and restructure. Generally speaking, part-time workers are still considered to be the other workforce, which is peripheral or marginal to the full-time workforce. Part-time employment for women still continues to be associated with casual employment conditions, a narrow band of occupations, low trade union densities, low pay, and a limited career path. And if that's a bit too 90s for you, here's a global study published in 2019 on the impacts of part-time work on women's engagement in the labour force, with a couple key passages I'd love to read to you. When part-time employment is typically associated with lower wages and poorer career prospects, it invariably reinforces LM segmentation on a gender basis, as well as a gendered division of paid and unpaid work, thereby confining women to a role as secondary earners. The fact that involuntary PTW contributes to increased female employment in Mediterranean countries, and that positive effects of PTW even exist amongst highly educated women without children, suggests that institutional rigidities have an underlying effect on low participation. Wow, it's almost like women are pushed towards part-time work, usually the majority of the time, by societal factors that they honestly have no control over. And this decreases their lifetime earning potential as they're locked out of the hierarchical systems that function as the drivers of our economy. It only took a very brief bit of research to find this out, and I too found the APH website page on the gender wage gap. Did you read the whole thing? Like, all the paragraphs before the bit where it says multiple studies have identified a small but persistent unexplained gender pay difference or gap, or where it shows this graph, or even this one? Why didn't you show this? It's got permanent part-time employees and a 2.7% gap in favour of women. Surely you would want to show this to prove that the wage gap doesn't exist. Or wait, then you'd have to zoom out and show that the wage gap is biased against women and exists in full-time and casual employment, and then discuss how even if the part-time work favours women, that's still bad and is just more proof that institutional factors at play hurt someone's overall income for reasons out of their control. Yeah, we'd better just continue with the video. I'm gonna skip this bit about dudes being assholes because there's really no reason to keep it in my video. It's just anecdotal fluff to appeal to his massively male audience. Yep, we're dudes who hate stuff and we stay at work for ages. I mean, dudes hate work. Everyone hates work if we're gonna talk about anecdotal evidence. How long have you been a rugby player's son cosplaying as a comedian? Most people don't spend extra time at work for fun, bruh. But
the most important and significant variable in all of these comes down to babies. Women choose to have children. Okay? They just do. It's a choice. You don't have to, and that either puts a stop to career progression, or at the very least, it limits the rate in which it increases.
Ah, yes! Children. The most important thing that women choose to have. Of course, he is right. Having children is a choice that only women have to make. Oh, wait. Sorry. I'm just getting a phone call. Here we go. Wait, what? Men have that choice too? See, here's where Butters makes his first big mistake. If you don't count all the other ones as mistakes. He forgets that heterosexuality exists and is massively popular in Australia, and indeed the world. Did you know that in 2019 there were 305,832 births in Australia? And that's a lot of births. Did you know that 64.4% of those were to married couples? That's around 196,649.9 births that, at the very least, were born to two people, either of which could have made the decision to take time off work to care for said child. This isn't even taking into account the thousands of children born to unmarried couples. But the point still stands, that while people with uteruses are still the only ones who can have children, they are not the only ones who can take time off to care for said child. Not just a woman's choice to have a baby, the data clearly shows that the vast majority of children born in Australia are the choice of multiple people. Now, why do I bring this up? Because Butters here wants you to hear the word childbirth and think that's his get out of jail free card. Women have kids, and this stops them from having careers, which is true. Women who take time off to care for children lose out on money. Men who take time off to take care of children also lose out on money. The issue here is that the person staying home takes on a massive amount of unpaid labour throughout the life of the child, and the majority of those people are women. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, so put a pin in it.
The idea that women are paid less for the exact same work as men is not only factually inaccurate.
Well, yeah, if women were paid less than men for the exact same work at the same job, that would be illegal. It's called wage discrimination. It's also not what any of the data you've presented so far has been about. Why have you suddenly jumped across here? Is it because you know that the data show men earn more and you need 8 more minutes of content to make a monetizable, advertiser-friendly video?
It is also, in my opinion, detrimental to young women. And here's why. If you're told from the moment that you are born, the moment you go to school, when you start picking uni degrees, that you will never make as much as a man, you'll never be as good as a man, then maybe that'll stop you trying. And that's fucked up. It might even lead you to having less confidence to ask for a raise, or not even trying to shoot for the stars, if you will, when it comes to your career progression.
Ah, yes. This video is for all the women. Isaac is just out there trying to support women's self-esteem. And the real problem here is the media pushing the narrative that women are paid less. And that's what's at the root of society's mistreatment of women and their overall wage gap. Yep, that is certainly a hypothesis. Bold move. Cut and let's see how this one plays out.
So why do mainstream publications, famous people, politicians, and newspapers push this agenda? Well, if they don't, they would be destroyed by the vocal people that push this shit constantly. Take this video from CNBC that they created just recently.
Here are 6 common myths you hear about the pay gap and how to convince the deniers that it's real. Women leave the workforce to have children.
I don't know why these ladies look so confused here. Women do. Maternity leave may be shit, but the point isn't that maternity leave is shit, it's that it's a choice. Women make this choice to have a baby. You don't have to have a baby.
It's not that women want to leave their jobs to take care of children, it's that they're forced to. A lot of men and women in the US don't have paid family leave. Research shows that women will take unpaid family leave, but men refuse to.
Once again, it's a choice. It sucks.
So now it's Butterfield's turn to debunk the news, and I'm gonna be debunking Butterfield, debunking the news. Now, again, he keeps talking about how women make the choice to take paid paternity leave and that it sucks. But did you hear the video you just reacted to? The word women used was men refuse to. Men, even when they lack caregiving support from a spouse receiving paid leave, oftentimes refuse to take paid parental leave, which hardly makes it a choice for the female caregiver who then has to stay home. Men don't take leave for many of the same reasons that women don't, or would like not to, but are forced to. They might lose out on career progression, for one, but also there's another reason that doesn't necessarily affect women. They might be seen as childcare shirkers. According to the data from the study that Butterfield talks over, the one at the bottom of the screen, men fear being seen as milking the system and staying home, whilst a woman taking leave is seen as normal. That's insane! If you have a kid, you're entitled to stay home and nurture that child. If you live in a country with paid paternity leave, sorry, rip to the United States, I guess. But we see men as less capable of nurturing than women, and thus men and women are forced into their opposite gender roles. One with less money, and the other with less time with their loved ones. Now that sucks. But Butters isn't going to talk about that, because that would be feminist sociology at work, and that's all feminazis and buzzwords to him.
Men simply work harder and work longer hours. I don't think so.
On average, women spend more time than men doing housework and caring for kids and older family members. And while women are at home doing domestic work, men are able to log more continuous work hours.
So there you go. They're talking about these women who are at home doing unpaid work or raising a family, and the dudes who are still at the office, maybe they're working extra hours now to pay for the family. Is this sexism? Maybe. Or maybe this has more to do with the dynamics of a particular relationship. Because in some situations, you'll find that the female is the breadwinner, and she will stay at work and work those long hours, and the dude will be home looking after the kids. I think it's a case-by-case situation.
Yup, the unpaid domestic labour argument. I want to highlight one specific sentence Butterfield uses here.
Or maybe it just has more to do with the dynamics of a particular relationship. The dynamics of a particular relationship. Because I think it's a case-by-case situation.
Can it really come down to the dynamics of a particular relationship if it is a description of a nation and worldwide issue? At this point, you can really put that down to institutional sexism. It's not a case-by-case basis if the majority of data points point you one way, my dude.
Men are more educated than women.
Absolutely, not true at all. More women complete degrees than men. Unfortunately, there are more women completing feminism degrees, which pay nothing, than men completing engineering degrees, which pay a fuckload more.
Oh, good. He did 2 minutes of research and included the obligatory women's studies joke. I'm so excited 2016's humour is back. You're gonna throw me out of a helicopter too? Did you know that the highest paid careers in Australia, according to the ATO, are medical professionals? A field dominated by women. In 2019, in the US, women outnumbered men at medical schools. How exciting. Second highest paying field in the country is finance, and management and commerce is a uni field that is considered mixed gender-wise. Law is third, which falls under management and commerce. And it's only until we reach spots 4 and 5 do we hit male-dominated study fields, ICT and engineering, both STEM fields. Fields in which, as we have already discussed and covered, there are plenty of historic and ongoing biases against women in the fields of study and in the workplace, which leads directly to fewer and fewer women studying those courses. Please, I am begging you to do more research. Doesn't take that long.
Women don't know how to negotiate.
It's true that women are less likely to negotiate job offers, but that's because when women ask for higher salaries, they are viewed as high maintenance, demanding, and often penalized.
Who gives a fuck how you're viewed? If you want more money, ask for it. Do the work, make sure that you've got everything backing you up, and then ask for it. People probably think a man who's asking the same questions is a fuckwit too. Who gives a fuck? Ask!
What do you mean, who the fuck cares? If your boss views you as high maintenance and demanding, he isn't gonna give you the raise, dickhead.
Men pursue higher paying careers.
Women are not deliberately setting out to find lower paying jobs. The jobs that women do are valued less than men's.
Once again, teaching, a female-dominated profession, is paid less than electrical engineering. Why? Probably a myriad of factors. Potentially, the wealth creation is more in the electrical engineering sector. Now, does that mean that teaching isn't important? Of course it's important. I think teachers should be paid the most anyway because they're creating the adults of tomorrow. But they're not. And people know this when they make these choices of their careers. Whose fault's that?
We've already covered this. Women don't just choose careers for the money. They choose careers that they perceive as being accessible to women because of the historic biases in the fields. Come on, next point.
One of the big factors that comes to the wage gap is that there is an unconscious bias for men to employ other men. And it makes sort of sense, right? Sexism, men picking other men, they don't want women there, yada, yada, yada. And this is exactly what a 2017 study set out to discover. But to their dismay, they found exactly the opposite. This study was commissioned by the Australian government. You've never heard of it because it didn't really reflect the results that they wanted. They decided to look at the bias employers had whilst hiring people for senior positions in the Australian public sector.
Now, this study is great because it shows a couple things. One, white male CVs are better than women's or minority groups, which shouldn't be surprising, as the wealth of research on the topic shows that white men have a greater access to opportunity and have advantaged access to higher paying and higher status positions. Not surprising. Two, it shows that our efforts to increase diversity in managerial positions is working as we start to view people for who they actually are, as opposed to just some words on a page. How qualified someone is for a job doesn't just come down to previous work and study experience. It comes from who someone is, how they work in a team, do they suit the work environment? As we've already discovered, women who push for promotions and raises at work are seen as high maintenance, while men are seen as confident and driven, which suddenly turns the tables back in the favours of men. These are fairly basic sociological concepts, my guy. I understand why you want to drop in, prove everyone wrong with some facts you discovered in a study, but I want to read a few bits to you. First, one previous Australian study pointed to discrimination disadvantaging ethnic minority applicants seeking entry-level employment. This involved sending fake CVs to job advertisements that did not require post-school qualifications, and subsequently measuring how callback rates varied across different ethnic groups. We find very different results when focusing on recruitment to executive level positions in the public service, where recruiters appear to be positively discriminating in favour of female and minority candidates. So it's good to know that ethnic minorities already set in the workforce are good to go, but the ones just starting out are shit out of luck, I guess. The really important part, I think, is this. However, it remains clear that more work needs to be done to address the problem of gender inequality. The shortlisting stage of recruitment is one small piece of the diversity puzzle. Other stages of recruitment could be tested, including how positions are advertised, what information is requested from applicants, how interviews were conducted, and how hiring panels are selected and run. We also need to study factors that influence career trajectories once candidates are hired, including opportunities for trading and professional development, talent management, performance reviews, evaluations for promotions, and flexible working arrangements. Acting like this one study is the be-all and end-all of employment discrimination in Australia, and indeed the world, is disingenuous at best, but we know that. Why else would you have made these 3 videos on the gender wage gap without doing any of the research that would show you that it is a real issue with the way that we treat women in the workplace? You keep saying that it's real, but it's not sexism. It's just all these small societal things adding up to 10% fewer dollars. But those exact things are rooted in long-standing sexist biases against women. Like, come on, like, connect the dots. It isn't even hard to find studies about unconscious bias against women in the workplace. Here's one from 4 months ago. Here's one in Nature from 2013, one from the ILO in 2017, and finally, in The Conversation. The way we treat women in the workplace is rooted deeply in how capitalism functions. Capitalism requires ongoing production to sustain growth, which sustains markets. When you take time away from production, you no longer receive the benefits of the system. In this case, money or a move up the hierarchical ladder. But this rarely gets discussed when we talk about the gender wage gap. This is because quite often the research is funded by companies trying to prove how diverse they are, neoliberal governments prioritizing creating a diverse capitalist environment, or by universities whose funding is beholden to one of the first two, and then the research is discussed on the news, usually paid for, again, by one of the first two. The extra 40 hours of unpaid labour women do is considered wasted labour under our current political structure, and always will be, unless the structure changes. Butterfield's labour is, of course, also pretty useless, as is mine, but at the very least, I got to spend far too many minutes talking shit about a dude who probably has crumbs in his beard. He gets so close to the real issues at play, and then dramatically veers off towards personal responsibility and grifting his, I'm assuming, 99% 12-year-old to 18-year-old male audience. Happy late International Working Women's Day. Solidarity with my working sisters, misters, and non-binary isters, and with Butterfield's dad, who was a union man. Good for him.